Markets are definitely on the skittish side this morning, a little bit down because of all the tariff noise. We'll talk about that in a minute. Tesla is down a lot, as we talked about last night on the show, because of Elon's move into politics. We'll talk about that. I mean, his latest move, I should say, into politics. We'll talk about that in a minute. And no, I'm not sad that I didn't hold on to my original concept on Wednesday, and continue to be out of Tesla until today, where I could have possibly bought back in a buck or two cheaper. That wasn't the plan. So no, we didn't get the huge drop that I think we would have seen if Elon was still playing in presidential politics, which is not what he's doing. So anyway, having said all that, Tesla down strongly this morning, but recovering. And the market down, and I think will be recovering. So there you go. Hardly any economic news. We'll talk about that later too. All right, here we go. I'm going to say something I said last week again, because on X, it's getting, oh, I don't know, tens and tens and hundreds of thousands of views. So it got some traction. So here it is again. I'm going to say it exactly the same way. Elon, please. In fact, if you know Elon or know somebody who knows Elon, could you send him this text? I mean, this post on X. Please build massive solar power gigafactory, build more mega factories in the United States, get your, you had talked about getting to 1 terawatt of Elon power as fast as possible. This was something you told us a few months ago. So let's get going on that. Let's just concentrate on that. If you do this, you will contribute massively to the AI capacity of the United States, help us win against China, and drive GDP growth above 3% per year. Because you've said it, I've said it, everybody's talking about it. Energy right now equals wealth. I mean, it's equal. That's been true for 150, 200 years, but it's more true than ever. And everybody's talking about it. You've got all the keys to the kingdom. All you got to do is build that solar gigafactory and more megapack factories, and you can get it done. This will do far more than your political effort to solve both the debt crisis and the renewable energy future simultaneously. Let's do it. Let's go. Please tell me where I'm wrong if you think I'm wrong. Musk's foray into politics. Let's talk about the negatives and the positives. So on the negative side, number one, it can continue to harm the relationship that he had with Trump, and at least reduce the likely benefits of that relationship. So, maybe they'll get back together again. They really enjoyed each other's company. Maybe they won't. But at the very least, you can expect no benefits, and there could be a few detriments. Number two, Trump could do like Biden and actually go crazy and fight Elon, or do negative things regarding the companies. It could be worse than my little, maybe it's not going to really matter that much. Number three, Republicans who have been warming to Elon and to Tesla might now be less likely to do so, and even be negative, because they really like Trump, and therefore this would be not seen as a good thing. Number four, it does nothing to help Elon with the liberals. This fight is not going to help him with the liberals. They're not going to, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. No, that's not going to work. And finally, number five, and I think the one people are most concerned about, is Elon is distracted again. So let me talk about the positive side, or the answers to some of those. So number one, to the extent that Elon cares or is thinking about the political ramifications for Tesla, and he may not be, he's just saying, no, this is what needs to be done. He might be thinking he can woo the big middle to his side. And that would be huge if true. So there's this is what he said that the party is supposed to be. You get the right-wing crazies and the left-wing crazies, and he wants to woo the big middle. And that's kind of the, the formula that he thinks he has for the American party. The truth is, he's really more of a deficit hawk, which is kind of far to the right. And so I'm not sure he's going to woo the big middle, but that is maybe a concept, and he might, in fact, woo some people in the middle who are not happy with either party. That's a possibility. Number two, it keeps Elon front and center in national politics. keeps him on the stage, keeps him in front of people that would not normally be in front of him. And you got to remember the adage that there's no such thing as bad publicity. Well, in Elon's case, I think he's proven that sometimes there is such a thing as bad publicity, but most of the things that he's gotten that has hurt the brand the most and the things that have hurt Elon's reputation the most have been flat lies. You know, the salute and all this kind of stuff. Those have been flat lies. And so the publicity that he's getting for what he's been doing around the Trump administration and whatnot, for the most part, I think has been a net positive. Number three, the financially hawkish wing of the Republican Party will be very excited, and he could pick up some votes from that group. Number four, the future of Tesla will be much less impacted by politics because the future of Tesla is already solved. If you understand what I'm saying? I don't think Robotaxi revenues are going to be impacted by the politics. I don't think Optimus revenues and profits are going to be impacted by politics. That's what I'm trying to say with that one. Number five, I think the third party and its limited idea to try for a few senators and congressional seats will take far less, very much less of Elon's time and his intellectual bandwidth than even a new company or a new Tesla product. This is not, I mean, it's not easy to, win a few Senate seats and a few congressional seats. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, but I don't think it's going to take a lot of his time or intellectual bandwidth to get it done. I currently consider Tesla to be at the bottom. I think it may have touched on the 290 just a little while ago, and I think that's it. And it did bounce very strongly off that 290. As you know, I took a poll yesterday, and a lot of people said this morning they'd be buying the dips, and I think that's happening. So I think there's a floor building right now. We'll talk more about that with Nicholas Gibbs tomorrow night. I think he's going to agree that we've hit a floor. And no, I don't think we're going to 250, which I did think last week. I think that is off the table at this point. 290's it, and we will now start building from there. The downside risk on Tesla right now is close to zero, therefore. The upside risk, merely 100x. So you don't see many things like this in the history of the stock market. The big, beautiful bill, which is now the big, beautiful act, has done its worst, and that is over. But the expectations of a huge third quarter for Tesla, the deductibility of car loan interest, the fantastic economy that's going to be coming maybe in the third quarter, but certainly by the fourth quarter, combined with the specific product and service introductions by Tesla in quarter four and next year, is like nothing I have ever seen in the market. Just so many things. We've talked about them over and over again. I'm not going to list them again. You know what they are. Yeah, sure, the multiple for Tesla is really high right now because of these hopes, but that multiple isn't close to capturing the value of Tesla right now. Any serious person doing, taking a 5-year look, taking out to 2030 and looking at the potential Robotaxi and Optimus income, both revenues and profits. You look out to 2000 and then bring that back to current values based on any interest rate. I use 14%, but you come back and you say, okay, what would that value? Say 10 trillion by the company being worth 10 trillion by 2030, and you bring that back to current values. Well, I say you get to $3,000 a share right this minute, which would be 10 trillion, but I'm saying it's more than 10 trillion by 2030. So you bring that back as to $3,000 right now. I'll cut that in half, or maybe cut that by 75%. That would still say that the current valuation should be at least double what it is today. And of course, I think it should be more. I think it'll be 1,000 by the end of the year. Robert at Tesla will win. Tesla will win. I like that. He says, replying to AJ's immediate loss of the ZEV credit stream in the U.S. could be a black swan-like event. So there's going to be this loss of the ZEV credit in the United States, and that is going to cost a couple of $2 billion a year. And yeah, that's important. I don't think it'll be a black swan event because I think people know it. Sophisticated investors get that one. That's one that hit their newswire last week, and that's already in the numbers. he says, I haven't spoken to anyone who's expecting that provision to pass. Yeah, but I don't think it's going to affect retail investors. They won't care. It will have knock-on effects, and it'll make ICE vehicles cheaper. That's true. That's going to help GM and Ford and other U.S. makers. There's no doubt about that, and therefore make them a little more attractive to purchase. However, if you've listened to me over the weekend, you know I don't think Tesla will have any trouble selling vehicles in the third and fourth and fifth and sixth quarters. Oh, third and fourth quarter of this year, first and second quarter of next year. I think they will be sold out, and it won't even be hard to sell out. It'll be sold out, period, as people try to take advantage of the $7,500 tax credit in the third quarter, and we get all the new products and services in the fourth quarter. It's going to be crazy time. The Big Beautiful Act includes a good news piece in the allowance for consumers to deduct taxes on auto loan interest, and that'll be big. That's going to be a big help. That deduction could be up to $10,000 in car loan interest. AJ has this. He says, relative to the battery component manufacturing tax credit, there are new restrictions on critical minerals relative to sourcing with a foreign entity of concern or foreign controlled entity, but otherwise those battery credits remain in place. AJ says, according to media reports, there's also a new U.S. manufacturing requirement for secondary components of batteries. 65% of direct materials cost must be attributed to some subcomponents mined, produced, or manufactured in the U.S. Corpus Christi Corpus Christi refining plant. 12, he says, also the end date for critical materials production tax credit is now set at December 31, 2033, whereas the Inflation Reduction Act had no end date. Also from AJ, I estimate that Tesla's Bitcoin holdings will provide a positive non-cash impact of about $283 million because the price of Bitcoin went from 82 to 107 in that period. Nvidia is nearing 4 trillion. This is me now again. Nvidia is nearing 4 trillion and is likely to be the first company to hit that milestone in terms of its capital valuation. It is already right now the most valuable company in history, and today is down a tad last time I checked, but I think it'll probably continue up to that 4 trillion. This is Randy Kirk. Have you hit the like button yet? I'm waiting. Just takes a second. I can outweight you. Anyway, please hit subscribe, hit notify. Larry Goldberg, Brian White, regular schedule coming up today at roughly 5 or a little before and 7:45. As noted, there are no real economic reports out and about this morning, but the VIX is in a little bit of a risk-off mood due to concerns over the threats and the statements that were made over the weekend about tariffs by the president and by Bessent. At this point, the market has certainly figured out that the tariffs are going to end up averaging around 15%. I don't think it's going to be materially different from that at the end of the day. So I don't know why markets are concerned about this. It's not like they're going to now jump up to 20 or 25. And if they did, it's still not going to be a big deal in terms of the future markets. You see, as Bessent says, he said it over and over and over again. He said it again on the weekend shows. He says, if the tariffs are going to slow commerce, then they are going to be material enough to get the revenue of $300 billion that they are expecting for their government. If they don't get the revenue, then they're not as impactful on the economy. You can't have both a negative impact and not get the revenue. So the likelihood, though, you can have it the other way. You can have the economy do fine and still get the revenue. So the good news potential is way better than the bad news potential. And I expect, hopefully, and 100% expect that we're going to see the revenue and we're going to see a golden economic situation by the fourth quarter. Well, in a longish article over the weekend, I also saw the argument being made that companies have become very sophisticated with things like tariffs and other barriers to trade, currency swings, regulations. This is not nearly as big. This shock to the economy, which is a one-time shock, is not nearly as critical as, say, oil going to 140 was a few years ago, or having 2 million immigrants crossing the border every year, illegally, or having that immigration flow end abruptly and reverse. These are big impacts, and nobody's talking about them. None. I see zero except for me talking about the impact of a 3 million person turnaround with regard to border crossings from 2 million positive to 1 million negative. This is a pretty big deal. 3 million people a year. This is not going to stop. This will be a continuing issue. The Wall Street Journal says today, this is a very good article. Listen up now. Not that long ago, the abundance agenda was all the rage among liberal elites. Do you remember that? That was over the winter. We had books coming out and everybody talking about that the liberals were now the abundance, the party of abundance. And it was just a matter of how the government was going to rejigger the way that the government does things. And then the government, because they're smarter than the rest of us, the government could change the rules and the regulations and they could make an abundance economy. So everybody was talking about it. But then along came the Democratic Socialist Zoran Mandani, who won the New York City Democrat mayoral primary on a paucity platform that calls for higher taxes on the risk, greater income redistribution, and expanding government control over private business, like, for instance, seizing the means of production. Yeah, this is going to be good for the future, wealth of the people in the city of New York. Yeah, that's going to be great. So, and we've got AOC and Bill Clinton and everybody else. Yeah, you go, Zoran. In New York, is New York City ready for a Democratic Socialist mayor? Despite the tension between the two camps, both believe government should be the re-engineering of the economy and society to get to their desired liberal ends. They simply differ in their methods. One favors government command and control, like Mr. Mandani's proposes rent freezes, and the other prefers a gentler form of government coercion to get to what they believe would be increasing wealth. Consider the phony permitting reforms that California Governor Gavin Newsom signed into law last week. The legislation, he said, embraces a transformational abundance agenda focused on building more of what California needs in terms of housing. And it does no such thing. While easing permitting for some apartment buildings in cities, the legislation reinforces regulatory barriers to building single-family homes, and therefore sky-high prices was going to continue to be the deal. Mr. Newsom last week announced more funding for similar projects. According to the governor's Housing First philosophy, free housing and government services, which apparently prevents free kibble for pooches, will help the homeless get sober and find work. Urban housing projects that don't meet all of the law's requirements for a 𝐄𝐦𝐚𝐲 exemption can still qualify for streamlined permitting, but only if they ditch gas stoves and heating. Housing developers will also have to pay into a state fund for affordable housing and public transportation to mitigate the project's carbon emissions. You want a permit? Well, we've got a $120 billion bullet train we want you to finance. The legislation may expand housing for yuppies and vagrants, but it won't help the young families who have been fleeing the state owing to the high cost of living and the lousy schools. Between 2020 and 2024, California's population under 18 shrank by 523,000, according to the Census Bureau data. Texas grew by 199,000, and Florida grew by 219. Sounds like all those kids went to Florida and Texas. Progressives are trying to drive more people to live in cities, even as their policies make them unlivable, which is driving people who don't share their politics to leave. Whenever they use nudges or brute force, the goal is the same. Expand liberal government control over how people live. You either put up or you get out. Okay, I like that article. Eddie, I didn't like what it means, but I did think it's 100% true. Trump is at 50% this morning, and he was, for the whole month of June, was at 51%, pretty much where he's been since he's gotten into office. The VIX is up a full percent this morning to 17.65, but is already kind of trending down again. Now listen to this. Trueflation at 1.75. That's a huge drop from 2.2 last week. I think I didn't have time this morning. Between now and tomorrow morning, I will try to dig into all of I think there's like 12 different subsections and see if this makes sense that we're already down to 1.75. That is a pretty steep drop. All right, let's take a look at where the markets are in addition to those three that I now report on every day. I hope that's useful to you. So Tesla this morning is sitting at 293.06. That is kind of where it was all night. 294, 295 is kind of where it was all night. It is kind of trending a little bit down right now, as are all the markets. The Dow is down 0.5%. That is definitely showing a little bit of a downtrend, but it opened lower and has stayed down. The NASDAQ is kind of flattish, down 0.6, and the S&P is also tending down at 0.48 negative. The Magnificent Seven are all down except Amazon and Meta are managing a little bit of positivity this morning. And the Cathie Woods are all down except for PayPal and Block, both of whom are up. Block up fairly strongly, almost a full percent. And the Cathie Woods are trending up actually right now. So that would tell me that theoretically, it hasn't worked lately, but theoretically that would say that the bonds might be reversing their earlier up. No, they're not. No, we're up. The bonds are up 3.9 basis points at 4.379. This is not making Randy happy. Oil prices are up 85 cents, which is odd because OPEC just said they were going to dramatically increase the amount of oil that they're going to be pumping in July and August. And so, I'm sorry, August and September, I think that is. Oil up 85 cents, 67.82. But the difference between Brent and Texas Intermediate is back down to only $1.50 again. That's very weird. Natural gas down this morning, 1.2 at 3.368, down in the kind of the lower part of its range between $3 and $4. Gold slipping 14 bucks at 3.328. Remembering our 3.333 is kind of the middle of the range. Silver, in its effort to get to 38.5, is sitting at 36.80, which is down 0.79 this morning. And copper finally has fallen. It was just going up, and it's now sitting at 502. Last night it was 501, but pretty close overnight to where it was yesterday. The dollar is drifting around multi-year lows, according to the headline, and looks mixed to me in the numbers that I can look at right now. You've got Bitcoin down 212 this morning at 1082, but that's still really strong, way up close to its all-time high. And Besant is saying several trade deals are ahead, but you got to mix that with the fact that there's also been statements about about 100 companies not even bothering to pick up the phone, et cetera. Now, just real quick on that, the 100 countries that haven't picked up the phone probably represent, 0.001% of the business that comes from imports into the United States. All right, that's all I've got, except a reminder that last night there was, it got a huge amount of views. You might want to go back and look at my Monday morning, which had, I think, a few interesting things to say. But even more than that, I would encourage you to go back and look at what Phil Bicel said yesterday morning. I'm going to put that one up one more time. I'm going to put that card up to go back and look at what Phil Bicel had to say about the LiDAR systems, because it wasn't what you're used to. It's different. It's completely unique. I had never heard it before, and you know how I'm all about it. So go back and listen. He's a computer scientist, and he had some very fascinating things to say about LiDAR. There's the card. Okay, Larry and Larry White and Brian and Brian White and Larry Goldberg will be with us later today. That's all I got for now. It's been great talking to you.